share with a match can be a guide for how far back in your tree and their tree you need to go to find your shared ancestor or relative. So with a relative, a DNA match that you share 25% of your DNA with, let's say it's a female, that means she's either your half sister, your niece, your aunt, your grandmother, your grandchild. So based off of that, you shouldn't have to look any further back in your tree than your grandparents and her grandparents and their descendants to figure out how you're connected. As percentages get smaller, there get to be a lot more possibilities of how you and your match could be related, but then a lot of the closer possibilities disappear. So a match that you share just 1% of DNA with, they're not going to share grandparents with you. It's going to be a lot further back. So you will have to do more digging and look further back to find your connection. And one way this can be especially helpful is if one match has a lot of family tree information, the other doesn't. Sometimes the one with the big family tree is able to help the one that doesn't know to extend their family tree. And sometimes even if both of you are seeking answers and you both don't have them, you may have clues they don't. They may have clues that you don't, and working together can help both of you build your family trees. And okay, as far as DNA testing, you were wrong. So the short answer to that is no, with some caveats. But as far as shared DNA amounts, those are what they are, especially with the higher shared amounts. So if you share 25% of your DNA with another tester, that is going to be a close family member. There's no getting around that. The one sort of rare exception to this I'm aware of is if a bone marrow transplant recipient performs DNA testing, then sometimes they'll be a genetic match to their donor's relatives. So that can be confusing, but that's not very common. And on the contrary, if you don't share DNA with someone who's supposed to be a close relative, then that indicates there's something about your tree or their tree that is incorrect. It might be a paper trail mistake, there might be an unknown misattributed parentage event, and so you need to investigate that. Another thing to be aware of is if you're not dealing with those very close relationships, just like with the ethnicity stuff I talked about earlier, with a more distant relationship, you may not show up as a match to that relative on a DNA test. So I have a known third cousin who is not a genetic match to me. That's not because the test's wrong or because our family trees are wrong. We both match my dad, we both match his mom, we both match my grandma who also tested, but we don't match each other because we just happen to be among that about 10% of third cousins that didn't inherit the same segments from our mutual ancestors. So we both have DNA from our shared second great-grandparents, just not the same DNA. Another thing to be aware of, just kind of with the tests being accurate and relationship predictions and the amount of DNA you share, is that sometimes if you share multiple relationships with another tester, maybe you are third cousins in a couple different ways, then a test company might predict a slightly closer relationship for you than you actually have, because you share a little more DNA because you share multiple direct ancestors and not just one ancestor or one ancestral couple.